there, everybody. Welcome back to the Planes, Trains, and Comic Books channel. My name's Matt, and today we're going to review The Vineyard #1. But before we get into that, if you guys wouldn't mind sharing, subscribing, commenting, it really helps me out and lets me know what you guys want to see more of. So, with that being said, let's get straight into it. All right, we got the cover here for The Vineyard #1. It is an AfterShock comic, and it is by Brian Hawkins and Sammy Cavilla. And we start off on the first page in Virginia wine country, specifically the Blue Ridge Mountains, at a winery called, generically, the Vineyard Winery. And it seems like there's a man who's dying from his body being taken over by plants. And at first you think this woman with him is trying to help him, but it turns out that this woman named Maranatha, who is the main character of the story, is actually bringing his body to an altar, and she's supposed to sacrifice him to the god Dionysus. But she cannot do it. So as she fails to do the sacrifice, her son Adonis comes up behind her and says he will do it. So he takes the knife from her and he proceeds to fulfill the sacrifice to Dionysus. Then we start off on the next day, and we find out that Maranatha and her family own this winery. And Maranatha is basically the face of this business, and she's selling wine in the main reception area, but she can't really focus on what's going on, because in the back of her mind, she's just focusing on the murder from last night. So later that day, Maranatha talks to her husband, and this is where we find out that this is not just something Maranatha has been doing, but actually these sacrifices have been going on for a while, and it's a family thing brought to them by the dad. And up until recently, he's had to make all the sacrifices, but he has been paralyzed, so now it falls upon Maranatha to do the rituals. So later, Adonis and his father have a heart-to-heart, where his dad tells him that his mom is not going to cut it. She's not going to be able to make these sacrifices. So because Adonis is the only child there, he will have to take on that responsibility. And as they're talking, the trees come alive, and these creepy nymphs come out, and they begin to at first just hang around the dad, but then they move and begin to seductively touch the son all over his body. And that's where I'm going to cut it. I don't want to spoil anything else. So this comic actually came out a couple weeks ago, and it took me a while to get to it just because I had a lot to read, but I'm glad I did. I've seen plenty of movies and TV shows where the plot of an episode is there's people sacrificing to a god so that their harvest will stay good throughout the years. But I thought this one was a little bit different because the family being in on it adds a different dynamic, and the cult-like aspect of the dad being like a true believer in Dionysus is very interesting. So while the story isn't all that original, I feel like there's going to be something in the family dynamic that really takes the story in different directions than you would think it was going to go. So the writer did a good job with that. The art in this book is pretty good. It wasn't anything amazingly special, but there were some exceptional things that stood out. Specifically the wooden nymphs, I thought they were really creepy. And the way that the man at the beginning had the vines coming out of his mouth and orifices in his body, I thought that was creepy as well. So I think the artist was a really good job with that plant horror. So I'm sure later on in this series, we'll get some more of that and probably even more graphic and messed up. So can't wait for that. So overall, I thought this book was pretty good, and I'm definitely going to continue reading this to see where it goes. So I'm going to give this book a 3.5 out of 5. It was a solid start to a series. There were some really good horror elements in it, and some good cliffhangers that lead into the next issue. So if you saw anything you like, definitely go pick that up at your local comic book store, and we will see y'all in the next one.